Hi everyone, welcome to another Tales from the Tavern. I am GamerMomLuna. I'm one of the writers at Shadomain.com. Voiceover artist, interviewer, AP player, soon-to-be PAX East panelist. I'm very excited about that. Come see Tales from the Tavern live at PAX East 2023, end of March. Hope to see you there.
We're both pretty excited about that. So I'm Jason, another writer at Shadomain.com, and this week we're here interviewing TTBenjamin about his experiences in gaming and a few other things you might want to talk about.
Ben, we're super excited to have you. I know you and I kind of go way back in the space. So for everybody who doesn't know you, tell us a little about who you are and where we can find you around the internet.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm TTBenjamin. You can find me on Twitter at TTBenjamin1. I'm the host and guide of the Lawful Great Adventures podcast, a quest podcast about four friends on a long journey home, which is actually winding down. So that project is going to be terminating probably a couple of weeks after this. But we do have, almost 150 hours of content. So if you want to catch up on a very, very good podcast, feel free to give that a listen. I'm also a designer, so I wrote and kickstarted the game Adversary, which funded at 143% on Kickstarter in December. That's going to be coming out. We targeted end of March. I'm not feeling great about end of March, so we'll see April or May, somewhere in there. I mean, what's a Kickstarter if it didn't get delayed, right? That is a card-driven narrative game in the style of A Quiet Year, but with some mechanical heft to it to give the players some challenge while they face down the final big bad. So the whole plot, the whole idea of Adversary is that you build the final villain of your story, you face that villain in the final battle, and then on your turn you flash back using card prompts to the rest of the journey. So basically you tell the story of an entire grand campaign in a single 2 to 3 hour sitting. It's a great game. I'm really excited to get that public. Me and my writing partner, Zadkiel, worked on that. It's illustrated by Ty Burris from Aether and Steamworks, who is just one of the best people in the world. Top 10 person, I would say.
Absolutely. Shout out to Ty. Yeah. He actually did our overlay. So
yeah, Ty's great. So I've done some actual play streaming. I've done some guest stuff. I've done some interview stuff. I'm just sort of all over the scene. Have been for about 3 years. And I've got an upcoming podcast project that I cannot wait to tell people about.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to have you and learn more about it.
Cool. First thing I wanted to ask you was, how did you get started in TTRPGs?
So buckle up. There's a couple of different ways I got started in TTRPGs. None of them are the standard way anyone ever got into TTRPGs. So when I was 13 years old, we got our first family home computer, and that had IRC on it. Folks our age remember Internet Relay Chat. Maybe younger audience. It's basically Discord, but like no rules whatsoever, just no rules. And it was very bad user interface, and everything was like exclamation point commands and that kind of thing. And you could code in it. It was interesting stuff, but it was, remember, this was 24 years ago. So this is very early, like Wild West internet, completely unwatched, entirely unregulated internet, and I could have fallen into some very, very bad places because I was 13 years old, unsupervised on the internet. I could have ended up all sorts of places. Instead, what I did was I landed in this like anime-based role-playing collective where people would just like throw games together, and you would make an anime character, or you would like play as an anime character. It was all text-based. It was all text chat with like bot commands, and I just fell into this at the young age of 13. No idea what I was doing. Didn't even know what an anime was, but everyone was very nice to me for some reason. So I played in that for 3-4 years, I think. And there was one guy named Frank, and we've never, since that group broke up, we haven't been able to find the guy. But he was Frank. He was 25 at the time, and I'm still friends with some of these people, and they're pretty sure he's the reason that was like a safe place for like really, because we were all really young. I think he kept the rabble out pretty aggressively because there was no shady stuff or anything that happened in there. It was very, very surprising. So Frank, wherever you are, shout out, buddy. It's from Quebec, very heavy French accent. So Frank, viva Quebec. And so I would take some of the mechanics from those online games that I was playing, and I would take them back to my nerdy little friends at 13 and 14 years old, and we would all hang out and like write our own games or like hack together some of the systems that we were doing. So I didn't really touch a dungeon or a dragon until I was about 17 years old. By then I had already been playing and running my own games in these systems, which don't exist, and honestly, I could not tell you how any of them work anymore. After I'd been doing that for about 4 years, so I think I got in at like 2nd edition, and in my 20s I ran a 3.5 campaign. So I've kind of always been adjacent to the main Dungeons and Dragons game, but really I've been doing indie stuff the whole time. So that's kind of where my RPG background comes from. Very very different than the usual story of buying the red box and trying to figure it out with your friends.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I also did not buy the red box, so viva us.
Me either.
I don't know why. I don't know why you both are looking at me.
So from there, what made you want to get into streaming and podcasting, all of that stuff?
All right, buckle up again. Second set. So we got the belts around the waist, and now we're going to put the shoulder harness
straps
on.
Got it.
And we're going to put the bar down as well. So I ran a grand campaign, a level 1 through 20 grand campaign, doing 3.5 when I was in my 20s, and then I took a break, ran some campaigns when I was in grad school, came back to my hometown of Dubuque. And my friends were like, "Oh, you're back in town. Do you want to run a game for us?" I'm like, "Okay, I guess I've got this idea." The campaign that I was running was called Jorik and the Dragon, which I really want to do that game one day. It's great. It's a single setting. It's all set on one mountain, and it's based on like if you literally search random adventure prompts, the first one that comes up on Google is going to be something like, a dragon has been slain, but its hoard was not found, and now a bunch of people are going to go try to get the hoard. So I wrote this grand story about this hero Jorik who came, slew the dragon, and then didn't take the hoard, and now people are climbing up this mountain. So it's I describe it as like a high fantasy whodunit, but you already know who did it. It was a great game. So we got through the first full act of that, and then I hit a gigantic burnout wall and put all role-playing down for about 3 years. In the meantime, I'd gotten this really gargantuan commute, like 2.5 hours a day. So naturally, as a commuter, I got into podcasting, and my wife, who has never touched a D or a D, was listening to the Adventure Zone for some reason. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll spin that up. Well, I really liked the Adventure Zone a lot, so I spun up a few other AP actual plays. And finally, my friends came back and they said, "Hey, would you DM again? Would you come and DM again? We feel bad about how Jorik and the Dragon ended. Do you want to, pick up the mantle?" And I said, "Okay, but we're recording it and we're going to have a go." And that was 3 years ago. That was the Lawful Great Adventures podcast, which we ran in Pathfinder First Edition, because I already had all the books anyway, and I wasn't going to try. We came up with some ground rules. One of the big ones is that I was not going to spend more than 20 minutes per week preparing for any given session. Jorik required a lot of prep, and that was part of my burnout. So kind of the players all agreed, like, okay, I'm not going to prep very much, but that means you all need to like take the initiative and go do stuff and look for fun things to do. And it worked out really well. I didn't have to do a lot of prep. I had to do a lot of editing. That was
That's a whole different ballgame.
Anyone that's ever getting into making actual plays, however much work you think editing is, you're not ready for how much work it actually is. So so I basically replaced all of the hours of prep I was doing with hours of editing, which I still haven't edited the most recent episode. I have like a half hour left on it, so I'm going to work through that after this interview. But yeah, that's what got me into podcasting. Lawful Great Adventures got me into such programs as Tales from the Tavern. I still credit that as my big break. I was invited last minute by Diagnosed Matt, a streamer, who was like, because I hung out with them a couple of times on Verbal Components, and he was like, "Hey, GamerMomLuna needs someone to come in. Can you make it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess I'll speed home from work and I'll do the show." Met a bunch of people, kept branching out from there. I was on a couple of streamed campaigns, a Star Wars campaign with Atomic Zero. I was on 2 seasons of Ty's Aether and Steamworks, Roll for Chaos. A whole crap load of guest spots and interviews, and it's just kind of been spiraling out of like just twisting way out of control since then. So it's one of those mediums where like you can, if you want to do stuff in the AP space, like you can. You're not going to make any money, but you can do it.
It's very true. But it's great. Like I know you and I have talked about like the connections and stuff that you've made, and you know, if that's exactly it. Like if you're willing to throw yourself in the space and like put the effort in, you'll find people that want to do stuff with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the thing that I'm figuring out now, having been here for 3 years and kind of getting ready for a new project, is it doesn't take long to get surprisingly close to some of like the bigger names in the space. It's a really, really small world. Mm-hmm. You know, truth be told, when you talk about the amount of people in the AP space, it's tiny. It's still a very tiny medium. Even now that it's been going, I think APs have been going for maybe 10 or 15 years. They've probably been popular for 8. Like half that time, they've probably actually been like really popular. Critical Role, Taz, etc. It's a really small world. It's an emerging medium. So if you start now, even though it's been going for almost a generation, like you're still getting it on the ground level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, true. So you mentioned that Lawful Great Adventures is wrapping up soon, which is very sad. But for those of people out there who may have not tuned in before, can you describe the project and highs, lows, whatever you want to talk about?
The Lawful Great Adventures project?
Yes.
Yeah. So we started in Pathfinder First Edition and got through one entire campaign, all homebrew. So I designed a world where the deities are based on the major arcana of the tarot. That's really the big connecting theme through the entire thing, is the relationship between the characters, the world, and the gods, who are the tarot. So they're based on human experience. So it's not like there's a good god and an evil god and a fire god and a this god and a that god. There's a god of, there's like a travel god, and then there's a goddess of justice, and there's a goddess of reconciliation. There's a goddess of the experience of letting go of things, like those like very human feelings, because that's what you draw from the tarot. Like letting go, that's and reposing, that's the hermit from the tarot. Mm-hmm. A god of calamity and chaos is not inherently bad. That's just the tower from the tarot, right? Chaos is troubling at the time, but it's also very illuminating. It shows you what you've been neglecting and what you really care about. So that's kind of it's sort of been like this really long extended morality play from the lens of 4 teenagers who got basically isekai'd from their hometown all the way to the other side of the continent, and the entire goal is to just walk home, right? That's the whole I wanted to tell this travel story, and I'm like, here's what I'm going to do. We're going to start in your hometown. We're going to do the whole prologue in the hometown, and then once I teleport you, no matter what you do, as long as you are walking vaguely east, you're good. Like, so just go and explore and kind of follow your nose, and whatever hook you like, take that. And so they've gotten, in 3 years, they've gotten halfway across the continent to the capital city of Carefall, which was a game that we built using the Quiet Year, which was a lot of fun. And then they've been playing around in there for going on 12.5 episodes, and like we're gonna be in Carefall for a long time, because they all had a hand in building it. They all really like the city of Carefall, even though the city itself really sucks. Capital is Hellscape, but more importantly, there's just a lot of stuff to do there, and they want to do all of it. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna be here for a while. So yeah, so the final arc has to do with defeating a crime boss who is also secretly a dragon. That's not really a big spoiler, because the party finds it out basically immediately that he's a dragon, so it's cool. But yeah, so the big climactic fight is going to be a dragon battle in this giant city. We're really excited for it. It's going to be awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the basic gist. We wrapped up. We have one full complete campaign. Episodes 1 through 68 are campaign 1. It's gorgeous. Like, we could have stopped it at the end of that, and everyone would have walked away full and happy. But we kept going. It's really good. We really like the project. It's a lot of fun. We are going to keep playing off air. So one of the things we agreed on is we don't want to stop playing together, so we're just going to keep doing the campaign, but it's just going to be a table game now. We are thinking of continuing to record it, but not post it publicly, not edit it, not do anything like that. But our transcriptionist, Emily, who plays Azimuth on the show, said that they might be interested in going back through the recordings and continuing to update the transcriptions, just so super fans, I know one of whom is present, can continue following the story.
That's great. It's a sign of a really healthy campaign when your players just won't let you stop, right?
True. I think they would have all disowned me if I'd have been like, I'm never playing with you dorks ever again. I think that would have been a very rude way of saying it. But yeah, if I would have just like ended it, if I would have nuked it, I think they would have been really upset with me. But I want to keep playing with them. They're my friends. So
And one of the things that's been really cool about it is you've played around in different systems with it. You started as Pathfinder, you're currently running Quest, you dabbled in some other stuff throughout the campaign, which is kind of neat.
One of my favorite things to do when I'm doing a long-running campaign is dip out of whatever primary system that we're using and tell a completely different story in a completely different system, like a mini game. Like one of the things that's so iconic about Final Fantasy VII is that every so often, like all of a sudden, you're playing some weird mini game for a while. You do it once, you never see it again, and that's the end of it. And I like doing that kind of stuff too, but with like little bespoke systems. So most recently, we had a situation where one of the characters, Dr. Kirio, was asked to attempt to find the cause of this very rare malignant disorder that's plaguing the city of Carefall. And so we did a two-parter, which was a send-up of House MD. It was called Kirio MD, running the game system Phase Anatomy, which is kind of like Heartbeats mixed with Clue. So you're playing out a medical drama while you're also trying to narrow down what the disease is. That was 2 parts. It was so much freaking fun. It was great. So we also might occasionally post public episodes, like if we see a fun game that we like, or if I decide to bring back the Carefall Irregulars every couple of months. That was a mini series we did during the pandemic. It was community quest one-shots set in the city of Carefall. It's really fun, just a blast. If we decide to do anything like that, we'll probably post those publicly because I love doing an indie system. Recently, I bought Sentinel Comics, so I might. I don't know if you've looked at Sentinel Comics RPG. Oh, it's so good. It's very, very cleverly designed. So yeah.
I like to going back to the Carefall Irregulars. Not that anybody here was involved in any of those episodes, but I like to. As a super fan and part of the Carefall Irregulars, I was like, oh, I know this character that they are now talking with in the current campaign, who's now like a bazillion years old and definitely not human anymore.
Yes, that was so one of the things when we got back to Carefall, everyone in the cast agreed that so Carefall Irregulars took place 1,000 years before the plot of Lawful Great Adventures. Took place before this giant cataclysm, right? One of the characters played by Rabbit in the Carefall Irregulars was Xenax the Mostly Okay, who was a belligerent, drunken wizard. And everyone liked him.
He was amazing.
So one of the things we agreed we were going to do was we're definitely going to bring Xenax back, but we brought him back as a lich. Probably one of the funniest dungeon crawls / interactions I've ever run as a DM was breaking into Xenax's warehouse and finding him. I think that's the most recent episode. Hilarious. Honestly, I think it works as like you don't need to know anything about the story. You just need to know they're going into this place to go find this lich to get a MacGuffin. Like that's it. You got that? Go listen to that one. It's called Boss Lich. It's great. It's fantastic.
It's a really good episode, and you know, some of the stuff with him though, like the callback, the Bugatti and all of that stuff. I mean, I was dying as somebody who is familiar with the lore of it, because I was like, I was there when he got the Bugatti.
Yep. He had a floating glass Bugatti. Care Follow Regulars, ridiculous miniseries, entirely unserious. I highly recommend it.
All right. So, transitioning now to upcoming projects, I understand you've got something new in the works, and we would love to hear all about it. So tell us what you've got coming up.
Oh,
I'm putting the handlebar down now and holding on for dear life.
Get you a funnel cake. So I honestly, I say this with no exaggeration. I think this is the big one. So the project is called Gamewoven, and we just announced it yesterday. So chances are, if you're listening to this, you came here because we sent you over. So here's the concept. Here's the whole pitch, right? We're all familiar with when Taz built Aether Sea using the Quiet Year, or when Friends at the Table also did Quiet Year to build out this city that they then played Blades in the Dark in, right? So Zadkiel and I, Zad, my kind of co-writer for lots of RPG type projects, Zadkiel and I have been talking about this dream project of ours for roughly a year, where we just, instead of building a setting and then playing in the setting, we just keep stacking world building games in a single setting. So the original prompt was like, let's build sort of like an area using the ground itself, and then let's flesh out a town using the Quiet Year, and let's flesh out a single bar in that single town using Stew Pot. Let's flesh out the larger politics of the kingdom using Kingdom. Let's flesh out a dungeon in the outskirts of that town where they get the quest from the bar that we did Stew Pot in, let's use the system, the skeletons, to build that dungeon. And then after we've played like 8 world building games, then let's go and run that dungeon with all of this backstory built in. And so we started pre-production. So Zad and I were talking about this, and I finally approached Zad back in November, and I'm like, Zad, I think it's time. I think I want to do it. I think LGA is about to wind down, and I think if we're going to do this, I think we should do this. Now, this was in November. Keep this timeline in your head. It's going to be really important, okay? We had also been bouncing this idea off of Brianna from Pseudonym Social, who is wonderful and is the editor for this project now, and is also on the cast. And she does just like every freaking show under the sun. She's done, let's see here, Aboard the Opal Star, and Tempest Multi with Tempest Multi Season 2 has probably one of the coolest casts in the AP world right now. Like, just really good. She also does editing for, I think it's the Ghost tapes, like a horror audio drama, like an actual real thing, not just screwing around in the AP world. And so we've been bouncing that off of her for a little while. And so she was one of the first people we approached. Like, Zad and I were just like, hey Bree, we're doing it. We're doing this world building podcast. Let's go. And then Lex Olden, Call Me They, joined in. So we've got Lex now. Lex and I have talked about wanting to do a project together I think we've known each other for 2 years, and we keep getting on shows together, and then the shows kind of fall apart. So I hope that's not us. I hope that's not an us problem. I hope it's just great. But we've talked about wanting to do a lot of projects together for a while, or build a game or something. We have a couple of ideas kicking around for something we might want to write together. But yeah, so we got Lex in for this one. And Lex is going to be doing social media. And then finally, the thing that really triggered it, the thing that really set it off, was when Rob B. Rolling from the Roll for Chaos Network jumps in my DMs randomly after not talking to me about anything other than my dog for a month. And he's like, hey, I have an idea. Tell me if this sounds fun. What if we played Quiet Year and then played Quest in the city where we just played Quiet Year in? And I was like, oh, Rob, it goes so much deeper than that. So I let Rob in on the whole thing that we've got going, and he's like, oh yeah, we got to do this. So we've got a 5-person team, all of whom are really good. So I'm the producer and showrunner. Zad is the creative coordinator. So Zad is helping us keep the continuity straight, and handling some of the other aspects of the show that I'll go into. Lex is going to be on social media. Rob is our treasurer slash person who makes good decisions. And Bree is our chief editor. Person who makes good decisions, very important role in a 5-person team like that. He's definitely the adult in the room when we get into when we sit down and have meetings. So we did a bunch of pre-production meetings throughout December. We were just getting ready to plot out kind of how we were going to handle our pre-release schedule and do our tech tests and get our social medias all together and our Patreons. And then in July, the funniest thing happened. Wizards announced the new OGL. And the whole world exploded for about a week and a half. And all of a sudden, there's way more attention being paid to alternate game systems and alternate styles of play. Yeah. I was very tempted to rush some art out and announce the project right then and there. I'm like, we could capitalize on this. We decided not to. We've got a plan. You stick to it no matter what. And but one thing that I noticed was a few very big names in the TTRPG performance community started talking about what we had been working on quietly in the background for 2 months. Now, I am not someone who is like, you took my idea. No, instead what we've done is we reached out to those folks and we're going to have them on the show. Nice. is what we're really trying to do. So anyone that I've seen that's been tweeting about oh, what if we stacked world building games together? I'm so quick in their DMs hey, I've got a project for you. You want to come on?
Amazing.
So I don't want to announce any names just yet, but you'll see those announcements coming through. So there are people big and small that are really interested in this project. I've got a whole bunch of people kind of in the background that are are you doing the world building project? Are you doing it? You doing it? And they are stoked. The level of quiet buzz that I've experienced over the last couple of months preparing for this project is unlike anything I've ever experienced in the space. Gamewoven, I think, is going to be really cool. It's also going to be completely different from just about anything else anyone's listened to in the AP world. I am so excited. But that's not all. That's not the only thing. There's more. There's more.
But wait, there's more.
It's not just a podcast. We're opening up a public Discord. It'll be the Gamewoven Discord. Throughout this month sort of announcement till launch period, we're going to be opening up this public Discord where people can come in and play in the Gamewoven world. The Gamewoven world is going to be completely open source. Anything other than art, commissioned art. I guess if someone does some art and is I don't care, use it however you want, that's cool, that'll be public, but we'll make sure that's very clear. Anything that's put into the Gamewoven world, completely open source. Anyone can use it for any purpose, unless they're the worst type of person. Bigots don't use my stuff. Don't touch it. Get away. So it's going to have this open Discord. People can come in, they can play in the world, they can contribute to the world, and we will add it to the world because we're also going to have a world anvil. We've got the world anvil. It's all set up right now. We're going to start fleshing it out with some of the work that we've been doing in the background so that there's some seeds in there. And if people let's say someone likes a specific city in the Gamewoven world and wants to run a campaign in that city, they can update the world anvil with the events going on in the campaign, and we'll coordinate with them to do that. So it's going to be a community world building project on top of a world building podcast. We're also going to have a Patreon that's going to have your usual fun stuff, your bonus contents and your arts and your this and your that. One of the patron tiers is going to be the Game of the Month Club, where we take one of or the game we played that month, and we're actually going to give it to every one of the patrons in that tier. We're going to ethically purchase all of the PDFs from the creator. We'll reach out to the creator, ask them if they want to work out a deal, depending on how many people are in the tier, pay the creator, and then boom, send those games over to the actual patrons so that they can experience the game the way we did. It's gonna be really, really exciting. I cannot wait to share this. Last week we recorded the release order is going to be really weird, but we recorded the first thing, which was the ground itself. So we ran the ground itself for about 5 hours because it's a very long world building game, and we mapped out the tumultuous history of a single valley in this setting over about 1,000 years. It's incredible. And what's really fun about these world building games is, like, yeah, it's a lot of world building, it's a lot of factoids and a lot of history and like a lot of things happening, but we told a 1,000-year story. Like, there is a beginning, middle, and end to the events that happen in this valley that has a really satisfying conclusion. I'm like, oh my, like, even thinking about it, it's like, oh, this is people are really good, like, it's gonna be really satisfying to listen to. But yeah, that's gonna be the Gamewoven podcast, and we're going to just keep diving in with increasingly more granular or interesting indie games, world building games, storytelling games, whatever we can pull together to flesh out the world or tell stories based on hooks that we think are interesting. So in the ground itself, someone created a vampire character. There was a vampire in the ground itself, and so we might work in 1,000-Year Vampire to tell the story of that vampire, you know, and their experiences throughout the world. We were talking about our group chat is constantly buzzing with weird ideas, constantly. Like, one thing that we want to do is we want to do a Wander Home campaign about a food truck that just goes from town to town and kind of do a world tour that way. We're talking about a deity potluck. So there's actually like 3 or 4 or 5 like different god building games, so like little TTRPGs where you sort of build a god and their practices and their rituals and stuff. We were thinking of all breaking off, finding our own group, recording us playing through those, and then bringing them all back together for like a potluck thing. So that'll probably become like, that's the kind of fun stuff that we want to do. We just want to do really interesting things, but it's all going to be in this exact same world. That's the uniting purpose of it.
That's a lot and sounds amazing.
Yeah, it is a lot when I say it all out loud. Jeez.
I mean, we could cut some of it down so it doesn't sound like as much, but I don't think we should do that.
If I start to sound like I'm rambling, you know, clip an here or there, right? Or just turn my speed up, like 1.2. Like, man, Ben talks really fast, which I do.
You do.
But...
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, that all sounds like really cool. And it's sort of some of what you said too. I know before we started recording, we were talking a little about just how the space is really big with a lot of big names in it, but it's really small. And people are really easy to get in touch with and very approachable in this space. You know, 9 times out of 10, if you approach someone and you're, you know, fairly down to earth and normal about the whole thing, they'll at least give you an answer, you know? Like, yes, I would love to participate, or I'm sorry that doesn't work with my schedule, but please reach out again in the future, you know, things like that.
I can't imagine anyone like ostensibly being rude,
right?
To you shooting your shot, as long as you're doing it like a normal person and not just like doing like, I tag Matt Mercer every day until Matt Mercer tags me or something weird stunt. Like, I think that's a little inappropriate, but like, yeah, I can't imagine anyone being rude about reaching out.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think what we found is the people you would consider a bigger name in this industry, they haven't been a big name for very long, and they still remember what it was like to be just starting out, and everybody is basically reaching down to help everybody else, which isn't true in every industry, right?
Yeah, I think the older an industry, the less likely you are to receive mentorship from the biggest people. But of course, older industries also have things like academic practices that help you come up. Like, I went to music school, and music is you know, really, really old. I think it's at least 50 years old or something.
At least.
And at least 50 years old, the medium of music, all of it.
The Baroque period was like 1987.
Like,
so
yeah, but I can't like reach out to Wynton Marsalis and be like, "Hey, Wynton, would you come and play with my jazz combo?" Like, no, he would not. He's the best trumpet, one of the best trumpet players in the world. He would not do that. But like, there's creators that are, you know, at the pinnacle of, I guess, like fame and reputation in this scene, that like, if you catch them at the right time, yeah, they might say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah. One of the questions too that I was thinking of as you were talking about it is, how are you you sourcing some of these games that you're using? Like, are they just ones that like, hey, I just found this one randomly on the internet? Are they ones that you've like played tried and true? You know, how are you locating these games?
So a combination of things. So Zad and Bree have a lot are big fans of like little bespoke indie games. So they have access to quite a few interesting titles, and have either played them or read through them. The other thing we're doing is we're just like hunting around itch. So there was a bundle, I think it was called the Legacy Bundle or the Traditions Bundle, 75 games in it. They did over 75 games for $25 or something. I picked that up and just went through them and just like anything jumping out at me here, any ideas, that sort of deal. But now that the story is kind of going, so itch is definitely the place that we're looking for this stuff, because itch is where the indies go, right? So now that the story is going, we might say something to the effect of, okay, I really want to drill in on like this moment in the timeline of this valley that we're telling the story of. Is there a game that maybe does XYZ? So we might like go hunting around for a game that deals with cultures, like cultures clashing, like like immigrants moving into a new area and the cultural clashes. Well, there's two games for that. There's Dialect, and then there's It Is Forbidden. So like if you go sniffing around or asking around, like eventually you can find something pretty close to it. There's literally like storytelling games where it's a mech pilot who's being followed by the ghosts of all the previous mech pilots. And then right next to it, I found a game about a bunch of kids playing in the wreckage of a mech. And my first thought is, well, there's a story right there. Boom. There's one session and there's another session. So there's looking through lists and just sort of digging around and trying to find things that match what we're going for as we're expanding the story out. Pretty easy if you just kind of keep your eyes open and your mind open. So like right now, let me pop up to the list. The Discord chat is just so much. So right now, we want to get a game of the Quiet Year in. Obviously, we really want to. We want to get For the Queen in, very famous. We want to get It Is Forbidden in. We want to do our God Potluck. We want to do, there's a couple where you sort of build a magic system collaboratively. We want to do that because we want to make sure that, like, we want to know, and a lot of it is like, well, I want to find out how magic works in this world, right? So we need to play a game to do that. So rather than us declaring through through fiat, saying, well, here's how magic works in this world, it has to be done through play. We have to do it together. We have to sit down. We have to decide it through play. It's hard to not want to continue writing and defining things and fleshing things out privately in the background when the only thing that the audience is going to experience is the gameplay portion. So the wiki might contribute a little bit to that, but like ultimately we're trying to be really faithful to, we're building this world one game at a time. The creators are as much a part of the conversation as we are. So we're treating the book like a sixth player at the table. So we're trying really hard to be honest about the rules of the games that we're playing and play them as they're intended. But yeah, so one example might be, let's say we've got a story about, like, let's say we just did a little bit of a nod during the ground itself to one kingdom, the refugees of one kingdom arriving in the valley, which happened in the ground itself. Towards the end of that run, there was an opportunity to bring in some refugees from elsewhere. So that implies all sorts of things. There must be kingdoms to the south. Something bad must have happened. And so, what's going on down there? Well, that's a hook. So we were thinking, well, what if we did For the Queen and this kingdom that's like falling and that's their queen going that way? Okay, now what about these refugees that are probably scattering all over the world? What happens when they go elsewhere? Well, we could do It Is Forbidden, which is about cultural clashes, to sort of narrow down the cultural differences between those two societies. And every time we add something, it also more deeply informs how these kingdoms and how these people and how these places interact and how they live and breathe. Because so It Is Forbidden is about the gradual shifting of cultural mores when new people come into a culture. And it's all about building up and resolving conflicts. It's really very cool game. Check it out. But part of what you do, it's kind of funny too, because part of what you're supposed to do is just sort of invent dumb or weird or quirky cultural traditions, right? Like, so the rule is like group A, the group that moved in, is doing an action that group B, the people that lived there, dislike. And so group B has to come up with some kind of a cultural rule for why you don't do that. It's like, oh, we only spear fish through their left eye, or whatever, or we eat,
Mm-hmm.
When you eat corn, you have to eat it the long way and scrape your teeth, scrape all the corn, like something like goofy like that, right? And they don't have to elaborate, they just have to say that. Well, that has every one of those things has all sorts of implications for why that kingdom is the way it is. And so it just expands. So what we're already discovering even early on is that the more we flesh out, the more questions we have, and the more ideas we get following up. Is pretty profound. So,
yeah.
That sounds really cool, actually. If somebody was out there like as a game designer and says like, hey, I have this world building game, could they approach you with it and say like, this might fit for you guys? Would you be interested in people doing that?
Oh yeah, please do. 100%. I definitely want opportunities to work with active creators with fresh content. 100%. If I can get the new hotness and we can tape it and put it on the show, I would love the opportunity to do that completely. There's a Kickstarter coming up. Once again, I'm trying not to name names for anything because there's a lot of stuff that's still up in the air. We're still very much in pre-launch mode. But there is a creator who has a Kickstarter out right now that is very world building focused. And like, as soon as I saw it, I'm like, backed, direct message. So do you want this on a podcast? And so now we're having a conversation about when's the best time to showcase this to get that creator a boost, right? Because I don't want to do it while they're in the production lull before the game comes out. I want to release it like the same week the game goes live to get them some more hype, driving their show. Because technically I am a game designer, or I have designed a game. I'm certain that Adversary will make it onto the Gamewoven podcast at some point, because it's got a lot of world building elements in it and storytelling elements. But I understand, I want to, especially in the indie sphere, especially with these kind of quirky games, kind of unique and interesting. I want to help them as much as I can. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you're listening to this and you're a creator and you've done a world building game, or you're working on a world building game and you want an advocate, even if we can't necessarily get it on the show, I'm still happy to help use our platforms to push it out to the greater world. That kind of thing. 100%. I'm a total indie supporter boy. That's me.
Fanboy.
We asked you about your latest project, and I think the answer is this is a project on a project on a project, right? It's, I don't know, mega project?
We have the good fortune of having a very good team. That's the really big thing. What's making us really excited about it is that the team, me, Zad, Lex, Rob, Bree, Bree is a very good editor. Lex is really good on socials. Rob is a very organized person. Zad is awesome at juggling continuity stuff and coming up with unique ideas and approaches. Right. I'm there. It's a great team, and so we're not all having to carry the whole weight of the program, and we can sort of rely on each other to make sure everything's, because this is a really complicated project, and if this was anyone's first attempt at it, I would be like, this is doomed to fail. It's too complicated. But all of us have done this enough now. We've got experienced people on the team that really know what they're doing. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do the ambitious thing. Anyway, sorry, it sounded like you were doing a question, but I really wanted to just very excited about the team.
Oh, no, that's more or less what I was going after. But what I was going to say is, would you have any advice for somebody who's not doing such an ambitious project? How about somebody who wants to start a stream or a podcast? Do you have any advice for somebody who's just beginning, maybe?
Yeah, two really important pieces of advice. the first one is do a recorded tech test. Like, oh my God, do it. Biggest lesson learned from LGA, because our first episode was also our tech test, and that was it's fine. I trash it a lot, but like the audio is just so much worse than the entire rest of the show. And that first episode, like that's where the drop off happens. So do a tech test. Use the equipment you're going to use the people you're going to use. Play Monopoly in character or something, but don't. Do whatever you want. Play anything that involves some dialogue and some role play. A social deduction game, Sheriff of Nottingham, anything that has a lot of people talking. Play that, and then listen back to it and see if there's anything that needs to be addressed. That kind of deal. Like, so just don't do a tech test. I'm begging you. And then the other thing is have a really clear idea of what everyone's goals and expectations are for the show. Do not go into it if everyone is not on board with what you're trying to accomplish. Ask the hard questions. Are we going to monetize? What are we going to do with the money if we monetize? Things do cost money. There's hosting, there's equipment, there's that. Who's going to pay for that? Is this one person's passion project, or are you all going to share it? How are we going to handle it if someone leaves? How are we going to handle it if there's a chemistry issue? How are we going to handle it if there's a safety tools breach? What are our safety tools? What's the tone of the game? There's nothing worse in an AP than when I can tell. I guess there's many things that are worse in APs, but one of like the big things that sort of turns me off when I'm listening to an AP is when I can definitely tell there's one person at the table who is doing something completely different than everyone else, and it just sucks me straight out of it because they're not used. So it might be a serious podcast and one person's being a goofball, or it might be a goofy podcast and one person's getting like audibly irritated because everyone's clowning around. Well, if you're doing a clown podcast, the clowns are going to show up, right? Everyone needs to be on board with how that's going to go. You got to be on board with the kind of content you're going to make, and you got to be on board with your goals. And a timeline would be good. So I started mine without. Everyone was on board with how we were going to do Lawful Great Adventures, and I've been really proud of how we've really stuck to the mission. But one thing we didn't do was we didn't set up a timeline. We didn't decide how long we actually wanted to do it, how often we were going to check in on how things were going, and how we wanted to continue stuff. It was just like, oh, we're just going to do this into perpetuity. Well, I don't know, trends change, passions change, ideas come up, people, come and go, they move on, people get added, and like eventually, well, like my situation, you're 3 years into a podcast and you realize like, I don't actually want to do this podcast anymore. I want to do this other thing. But this podcast is so much work, I can't do the other thing. And now, we're in a situation where if we would have had that conversation 9 months ago, 6 months ago, we could have put a little bit more time and effort into wrapping up the whole story instead of just ending at the second arc of the second campaign, right? So having things like timelines together and having the hard conversations about what you actually want and what everyone else actually wants. And you can't be afraid to tell someone who doesn't want what you want that they maybe shouldn't be a part of the project. I know a lot of podcasts are started by people who have friends and they just want to play a game with their friends and put some mics on and that kind of thing. If one of your friends is going to be a stick in the mud and not do the podcast the way everyone else wants to do the podcast, that friend shouldn't be on the podcast. I mean, that's a mean thing to say, but like you can be friends in another way. You can have a table game or whatever else, but like they need to be on board with it. In addition, diversity is a critically important thing. And so if all of your friends are white and cis and straight, and you're trying to do a podcast in sort of the modern space, then you're not really tapping into the talent pool of diverse voices that are out there in the larger, creative space, and you're missing out on opportunities, and potentially, frankly, you're flagging yourself to maybe unsavory listener bases who would prefer all white casts. Like, there's people out there that suck, right? And so they, crappy people might be your audience if you don't plant a flag and say, nope, you're not welcome here. So, I mean, yeah, it's a very complicated thing depending on how much you want to achieve. Obviously, an all-white cast made up of their friends who are just playing around the table, it's not like inherently bad. I know a couple of people that started all-white casts in the last year and they're doing fine, and no one has they're not getting bombarded with cancellation notices or anything like that. But if you want to make it, you have to think about that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. You might have to hop around TTRPG Twitter and lurk for a while and just see what the discourse is, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was a really long answer.
No, but it was all very important stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Well, is there anything that we didn't get to ask you about that you want to make sure we cover today?
Oh boy, I don't know. Well, I can tell you this. So, Gamewoven was announced yesterday. Follow Gamewoven at Gamewoven. We got the platonic form of the name of our podcast that never happens to anyone. It's at Gamewoven on Twitter. It's amazing. Follow us on at Gamewoven on Twitter. You can reach out via email, gamewovenpodcast@gmail. That's an easy one to find. We're going to be launching mid-March. Tentatively, we're looking at, I believe, the 13th. We're aiming for Mondays. Monday is a sparse release day, and we want to start your week off right. But that's pretty much the details. The Patreon is going to be going live very soon. We're hoping to get some pre-backers. I'm pretty sure we're going to do some stunt goofs, depending on how many backers we get before launch. I'm trying to convince everyone, like every 10 backers, one of us will record a solo game or something. I think that'd be really fun. But we haven't actually announced anything yet. So if you follow the Twitter, you'll see all the new stuff. But yeah, keep an eye out for Gamewoven. I think it's going to be the new hotness. I think the actual play community has been orbiting this idea for a while, and I'm just really excited to actually show people, like, yeah, you can totally do this. We're definitely doing it. Like, you should totally game weave your own podcast. You should totally like mix and match like little systems and this and that. You should totally go nuts with it. Like, you don't need to stick to the same system, no matter what system you're doing. You can take an aside if you think one system is going to be more fun than another for a certain aspect of the storytelling. Like, yeah, just switch for a couple of sessions and then hop back. The PDFs are cheap. They're not expensive.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Is your Discord open to the public right now?
Nope, not yet. So I'm gonna be real here. I am stealing so much drip marketing strategy from Worlds Without End. Mm-hmm. Brendan Lee Mulligan, Abria, and Erika Ishii, their new thing. I'm just sort of like, because they announced their stuff in like January, and I'm like, I'm just like, whatever they do, I'm gonna keep an eye on it, and if we could do it, then I'm gonna do it that way. And they've been dripping stuff out gradually, so we're gonna drip stuff out gradually. But there's gonna be some art. We're already active. We're already talking about stuff. What we're gonna do is we're gonna launch with the first 3 episodes intact. Luna, you are actually on the first episode. We will be playing Quest.
Yeah, we will.
Little spoiler for the listeners, Zad might be really mad that I'm telling everybody this, but I don't care.
We love you, Zad.
Fight it out. Yeah, love you, Zad. Zad and I can fight it out. But basically what we're going to be doing is, so we've already done the ground itself, right? We're going to do another game in a couple of weeks together. And then we're going to run Quest for 4 people who have no idea what's going on, right? So the concept is 4 guests. It's Luna, and then pretty sure we've got David Tilstra, Big B's, and Glyza, our dear friend Glyza, we're going to come together, and they're just going to be your standard 4-person adventuring party, and they're going to go on an adventure in this world that we've been establishing in the background.
I would just like to say there is nothing standard about this adventuring party.
No, bunch of chaos gremlins. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
So literally like 4 of like some of my favorite people in the space, like getting together and doing this. And so we're going to, what we want is we want the audience to experience the world building that we've done from the perspective of people adventuring in the world from the ground level. And then we're going to lift the veil gradually over the following episodes. So what you'll get that the first episode will be Quest. It'll be everyone running through stuff. The second episode will be a world building game that sort of informs the purpose behind the quest, and then the third episode is going to be our first part of Ground itself, which is us establishing the entire world. The Ground itself is going to be like 4 or 5 parts. It's a long game, and it's really good. Like, I know it sounds like, oh, do I really want to listen to 4 hours of a world building thing in a single game? Yes, you 100% do. It kicks ass. It is so good. Yeah, so that's kind of the plan. So we're gonna there's going to be some sort of wonky stuff to get it started. We're going to do a little bit of screwing around with the format and the form, but that's the whole goal of the program, is to kind of challenge the larger form of actual play. So yeah, I'm really excited that you're going to be a part of it, Luna. Thank you so much for having me on for this interview. I cannot wait for everyone to listen to everyone is going to listen to this program. Okay. Michelle Obama is going to call me and is going to be like, can I come on? And I'm going to be like, sure.
Yeah, best I can do is
a month from next December.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry, David Tilstra comes first.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Michelle Obama. We just begged Brennan Lee Mulligan, and like, can we get you like later?
That depends. Are your kids coming with you? Because we might be able to get you a little bit sooner if they're coming.
How fun would that be?
Right?
I think that'd be kind of fun.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm really excited for you and for the whole team. I personally have talked with all of the people that you're working with, and they're phenomenal. I think it's going to be a really amazing project. So good luck. Congratulations on everything. I think it's great.
Thank you so much, y'all. Yeah, check out Gamewoven at Gamewoven on Twitter. It's the next big thing. You heard it here first-ish. You read it on Twitter, and then you came here, and then you heard it with your ears. That's what happened.
That's how it works. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. You can find more videos and interviews and fun shenanigans like this over on Shadomain.com, SHADOMAIN.com, and be on the lookout for more interviews in the future. Ben, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you. Love you both. I miss you.
Awesome.